What up friends, today I want you to watch me struggle with this one. What up friends, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another video. So as many of you know by now, I'm trying to develop the more loose characteristics of my style, trying to add some more things that I feel are missing or maybe are my weakest points, and really working on those skills. And the best way is to find another style or another artist that has this sort of contrast to your style. And this is what I found here. And this is again Alvaro Castanet's approach. And I just tried to work on this painting with his approach. Try to make sure there's a lot of dry and wet brush. There's a lot of warm and cool. There's a lot of all sorts of things like this, keeping it very loose as much as I could. And the reason why I say struggle is because this was a real challenge. This is like a new learning curve for me, honestly. It's like starting from scratch. Now, luckily, I did acquire a lot of skills in my watercolor journey so far, so I can tell values pretty well, and my drawings, I know to what level I should draw them, how detailed they should be. I have pretty much good wash control, and so now I'm taking these skills and I'm really trying to apply them in a bit of a different approach, while realizing that this is not going to be my final style or something like this. I'm going to take what I learned from this one and bring it into my own work. But sometimes in order to go a little bit that way, you have to take an extreme tour that way and then go back to this place. So this is what I'm doing here. I hope you enjoyed this process. It's a little shorter than usual. This one's about maybe 30 minutes because it's looser, so yeah, it's just a quicker painting. I did cut out some of the mixing, but I'll narrate, of course, everything I'm doing. Using basically 4 colors here, just French ultramarine, burnt sienna, quinacridone rose, not magenta like I wrote in the time-lapse video, but it's literally the same. And last one, new gamboge. Okay, so anyway, let's get started with drawing and painting this. Okay, so as always, I start with the drawing. This entire painting was a very interesting experience for me. I really enjoyed working on it, and it just gives me sort of an idea of what's possible with a looser style. I actually, today I did another painting that wasn't loose. It was more of my typical style, and I have to say that I suffered a bit. So I do want to stick to this sort of loose style for a while now. It's just something I enjoy more. So anyway, now I'm starting to draw the building. We have this nice rounded shape. On the left there is a straight wall. Here I'm just drawing the shapes of the trees around it. Someone asked in a comment, I believe, about this one, where it is. So this is on Rothschild Boulevard in Tel Aviv, here in Israel, which is one of my most favorite, I think one of my favorite streets or areas in Tel Aviv in general. And this building is specifically, there is a lot of old apartment buildings that stayed for a long time, but not that long, because Israel doesn't really exist for that long, at least not in the current constellation. But so this building is just an old remnant from a lot of years ago, several years ago, and I don't know exactly how many years, but in Rothschild Boulevard. So it's actually an apartment building, even though it looks pretty weird. So anyway, I put in this crossing zebra stripes thing, using some perspective. I didn't really use a specific vanishing point or anything like that. I just kind of stuck it in there. And now there's this fence on the left. And here I want to put some people. The funny thing is that when I took this picture, there were a few people exactly, they were coming from the left. There's this street corner, and I just got a picture in the perfect timing. I took a few, and this one was the perfect timing with 2 people, one crossing the road, another one on the left, and then I decided to add another person that wasn't there. There's the man that I'm working on right now. And to the right, there will be a woman, and she wasn't in the original picture. There was no one there, but I decided to add her just to balance it out if we have that person on the right, so to have 2, to create some more interest. scribbling in the shape of the trees here. I'm really pleased with the result in terms of light and atmosphere, but the abstraction here isn't as good as it could have been, because it was a challenge. It's a big challenge to see what you see and try to have a vision for how to represent it with fewer details. Which is, by the way, the whole thing with details is the reason why I suffered in today's painting, because I looked at it and I just saw so many excessive details that aren't necessary to convey anything. So just as a side point to let you know why I really dislike suddenly the very tight style. So anyway, so the thing is, I used a very scribbly fashion to sketch this, and this may have been a small mistake, because I still think even a loose painting, you can go a little more detailed with the drawing, just so that you have a better understanding of where to put everything. However, I will admit that sometimes when I add too many details, I am tempted to start working on it in a more tight way, which is not good, not what I'm looking for. So there is some merit to doing it this way, with very few details. So what I'm drawing now, there's the balcony and the strong shadow it casts to the right. These lines represent where the shadow is. And I'm adding the windows. It's funny because this painting was quicker than many of my other paintings. The video ends up being about an hour maybe, or 15 minutes, something like this. This one is 30 something minutes in terms of the process. 35 maybe minutes, something like this. So that's a nice thing, to actually create something that you like better in less time. That's really cool. So now there's this street sign that looked important, so I decided to put that in. You can see that drawing is really not that accurate. Now there's this person on the right crossing the street. I've been trying to apply a lot of the tips I learned from one of Alvaro Castanet's DVDs. I got the one in Girona, Spain, Costa Brava, all of those areas. Costa Brava, like he says it. And it's just phenomenal. But the one thing I took, and he really emphasizes it, is especially for the legs of people, to use very dry brush strokes for the most part. Especially if they're in the foreground, it just creates a better illusion of motion. And the alternative sometimes for me doesn't turn out really well, so it solved one issue I had with people. So in terms of the colors, I'm using a very simple palette. I'll let you know exactly what I'm using. I think I mentioned it also in the intro. I'm using a French ultramarine, New Gamboge, that's kind of the blue and yellow. I use those to make the green. Then I use also some quinacridone rose by Daniel Smith, which is the same one as magenta by Schminke. They're pretty similar. And finally, I used a bit of burnt sienna where I see the need to neutralize some of the blue. Because in some cases I didn't want to create grays, I just wanted to neutralize it. So anyway, also the way Alvaro teaches, he just says at the beginning you just put paint to paper, covering it all up. So I thought it was a bit dark, so I just added some water in there. And it was a good idea because also this building is quite old, so this added a bit of a weathered look to it. So yeah, now I just combined the blue and yellow to create some greens. I put the greens in there into the yellow, mixing with the sky, just covering the whole page with different colors. I think the trees on the right, I should have probably started with them being darker, because they all need to be a little darker, but it's okay anyway. So I'm going from top to bottom there, getting to the cars where I will leave some highlights. The cars there are white, and I'm just going around it. This is really an easy step relatively, as long as you get the wetness level correctly and you don't get too many blooms and cauliflowers. If you put in too much water into a paint that's already a bit dry, or maybe that's less wet, it's going to make the paint spread out, and so this isn't such a good idea sometimes. So yeah, covering it all up. The building is sort of yellow because I want to convey the sunlight. There's a strong sunlight coming from the left. It was close to sunset, and so this is what led to this look.
and I wanted to get that in. Now there's this fence behind, and I just go over it because you can see the trees through it, and so it's just a continuous green. That's another thing that I learned. The more you can merge your washes, the better. The more you can create less of a fragmentation. For me, at least, that works much better. So I'm trying to have this first wash be as even as possible without breaking it in the middle or making this weird separation between different parts. So now I'm negative painting around the highlight on the car. I got a little confused with the details there in the very far background. And this is probably due to the drawing that wasn't accurate enough. So that's one thing I would definitely keep an eye out for next time, just to make it a little more accurate, at least enough to give me some sense of what I need. So for the road, I'm using, because I already used new gamboge on the building, I decided to create a mixture of new gamboge and magenta and quinacridone rose to create this sort of an orangey, warm feeling to the street. This will be a nice contrast with the sky and also with the trees in the very background. So I decided to go with that color. And now I'm kind of just painting around that zebra stripes. That's, I think, the most efficient way to do this. So I kind of just leave it as a highlight there. Trying to be as accurate as possible. It's not necessarily that bad if it's not as much. One thing I experienced quite a lot in this painting is sometimes I would put a wash that's a bit too dark and then I'll just come back with water to spread it out. So that can work as well. Still very tricky, especially in this style, knowing exactly what the ratio of pigment and water to use, or paint or water to use, challenged me quite a bit. So now I just threw in, you saw some oranges in there, and this is it for the first wash. For the second wash, I'm starting to go really dark. Maybe not dark enough in some areas. So I could have probably split it into two washes, one that's not that dark and then another one that gives like the punch. It could have been a little more efficient, especially because I kind of got confused between these two options. But anyway, I think the result turned out okay. So now I should have negative painted around the tree trunk because it has strong light on it and it's like a highlight within all the shadow. But I believe it ends up working out, or I just lift some of the paint, I don't really remember. So I'm following kind of the lines that I put in there and shading the whole right side of the building. With this wash I also want to get the foliage to be dark. I want this palm tree to be very dark. These old buildings tend to have one or two palm trees next to them. It's like the previous video I did in Rothschild with my friend Maya, and also there was these several palm trees, which is really a nice thing to see in the middle of, because there aren't that many like in the center of the city. There are a few here and there. Probably a lot more than you would expect if you're not used to it, but for me it doesn't seem like too much. So anyway, I'm going a little darker in the bottom here. The mixture on the top is kind of a mix of all three primaries, or maybe I used some burnt sienna. It doesn't really matter as long as it grays it and kind of neutralizes it. It's best usually to create your grays with all of the primaries just to get a balanced gray that's also harmonious with the rest of the painting. So I could have used that here. I just turned it a little bluer near the bottom, which you saw a few moments ago. So now I figured that there is a medium value in between. So I just covered that side up with that as well. And the windows on the left that aren't as dark. My value control with this one, so it's funny because values are, usually it's the one thing I'm really good at reading. And with this one it was a bit of a challenge. Strong contrasts, kind of confusing with the sky. The building is very shiny because of the direct sunlight, and so it can be a little misleading. You think next to the sky maybe it should be darker, maybe it should be lighter. But anyway, now I mix some greens for the tree, and the tree's magic is going to come from the highlights. So I do leave quite a few areas with the yellow that I put initially. You can see that the green runs into the other washes. That's okay. It doesn't really bother me. I let it kind of mix. Try to stop it a bit, but it's not really that important. Yeah. And one thing that I will get later on is the tree trunk isn't as light. I probably could have left it like this, but it felt a bit too light, and so I just decided not to. In any case, so now I added a bit more blue to the mixture just to make it a little darker, which is a bit tricky because these trees are closer to us, so you don't necessarily want to make it too blue. You want to keep it a bit warm. So now you saw I added some blue, but also some yellow. And the tricky part again, another tricky part is getting to the people there at the bottom, where you kind of have to negative paint around them. And this is why it may have not been the best idea to negative paint already, to leave paper white highlights. I'm never sure if I want to cover everything up or leave some highlights on that initial stage, because I could have left the highlights of the yellow. Basically, I'm saying that I could have just covered the whole thing up with the wash, and maybe left one highlight that's not too hard to deal with, like the zebra stripes, or but in any case, it's okay. So now the fence is also kind of green again because of the foliage there. So I'm kind of covering it up, going at it slowly because I don't know when or how I will feel like leaving a highlight. So for now I didn't leave too many, but later on I'll add another darker wash and you will see how I kind of leave a little room for the fence. I think I could have merged a bit more of the washes, but oddly enough I don't have any clear conclusions as to what I could have improved from this painting in general. I just got a good taste of what's possible with this approach. So yeah, I can't really say for sure if there's one thing that was significant that I learned. But anyway, now I'm putting in that tree on the right. What I will say I'm pretty proud of with this one is if you do take a step back and look at it from far away, it looks wonderful, I think. The reason why is that the major shapes look good. Like the major areas of dark and light, these work. The abstraction could have been done a little better, but that's again a big challenge. So this is something I'll have to work on. So definitely the abstraction could have been done a little better. But aside from that, I would say that the warm and cool and the color selection, it all works pretty nicely. So yeah. One other thing that you see me do here, and this relates to the video I published about making every brushstroke count, is that I am trying to make every brushstroke count and not to fiddle too much, not to try and, you know, dab some inside and play around with the wash. I just put it in there, try to do it as simple as possible to keep it spontaneous and good-looking, vibrant qualities. If you overwork areas, you get this weird uneven wash because there's a lot of water, then there's a lot of pigment. I didn't want any of that, so I made sure to do that properly in terms of the getting things done, if possible, using the first wash. Or not necessarily the first wash, but not too much, not too many brush strokes, just to make it a little easier. So now near the end, I felt like it kind of is a harsh way to stop it, so I just took some, dried the brush a bit, put some water and blended it in. I think it works nicely. Yeah. So now I'm starting to put in some details for the people. I use just magenta and, sorry, quinacridone. I'm gonna make that error of the entire video. Some of the quinacridone rose and a bit of new gambos to make it a bit orangey. And I use that for the heads. And then I just work on each and every one of them separately. So, trying to improvise. I didn't have any clear colors. In the picture, the guy on the left was wearing a blue sort of dress shirt, and but it doesn't really matter. I just go with the flow. As long as I'm sticking to my color scheme, I'll get a nice result. So I'm not trying to imitate the colors I see at all. I have to say, it's such a breath of fresh air after so long of making tight paintings to finally work more loosely. Feels really good. Feels really good to just be able to express myself express myself better, I think. And I'm really starting to understand this saying that A lot of artists say that, like, do not compete with reality because you never win. Oh, it's so true. If you try to really compete with what you see, you end up creating, usually what I get is a poor imitation. So yeah, even thinking back at, or looking back at some of my paintings that I didn't really say officially that I was doing them loosely, I kind of did, you know? I kind of, especially with the landscapes, I didn't let the colors that I see dictate what I'm gonna do. I kind of went with it and used some of my intuition and yeah, I think some of my best work is a bit simplified, and abstracted, and so I think that's a good thing. I think that it's a good direction for me, and I'll have to learn how to combine the two. So anyway, yeah, you saw I'm using a bit of drier brush strokes for the legs, but for the person on the right, it's going to be really obvious. You'll see in a moment. For him, I really use some dark strokes. His shirt was kind of gray, so I just pick up some gray there from the mixture in the palette. And what I want to do now is mix very dark mixture. Just adding the hand skin tone again. And the next step is really to get a dark mix of the three primaries to create this sort of black. I didn't want to use the ivory black that I have by Winsor Newton Cotman because it actually produces good results, but I felt like it would ruin the quality of this, and it's better to mix the sort of black gray myself. I cleaned the brush a bit just to make sure there's no too much excess paint on it. You see I'm trying to get this in as few goes as possible. Also, this is true for the shadow. I'm trying to get it a bit dry just to contradict some of the rest of the painting that's fairly wet and wet. I need a better word for contradict. I don't know, because Alvaro Castanet uses this word, the contradiction, and it's really not the best one, but I sort of just forgot about all other options now. So like, I don't know, negate or contrast, maybe, to contrast the rest of the painting. So anyway, yeah, just sharing with you. So I'm adding now the sidewalk, where the sidewalk is. And the foreground feels like it needs some more details, so I am planning on putting a few more shadows there. This is an advice I got in my previous kind of loose painting process. They said more shadows on the road, and it is so true, because usually there are, especially in this kind of lighting conditions. So I will do that in a moment, or not in a moment, I think near the end actually. We're kind of almost 2/3 way done. So now I just put some color for the tree trunk. It's orange. It's just some quinacridone rose mixed with new gamboge creates an orange. This is the fun thing about such a simple palette, maybe 3 colors, that's all you need. It's just so fun, you can create so much with it, and you don't have to think, how should I mix this green? What green should I use here? What should I use there? It's just so much easier. Really, if you're a beginner and you want to buy some paints, and by the way, I'm adding now really darks to the tree, just to make the highlights contrast more. It's going to be really helpful to convey the light. So in any case, if you're a beginner and you want to start painting, what I would recommend to do, because a lot of people are they aren't sure if they should get a set, like a large set, maybe 12 paints or 24 even, or 36, God forbid, or you know, invest in a more expensive paints. And a lot of people start cheap, and I started cheap too, a little cheaper. But the thing is that I would recommend, if you want to get the full watercolor experience, get 3 primaries of a good company and end your expenses at that. I think this is a really good idea, and I think this is like, look, it's just 3 colors, and I could produce all of these oranges and greens, and some purples aren't here, but of course it's possible. You can do so much with it, so why not, you know? So I would highly recommend getting this instead of like a full 24 or 12 set. That's just not necessary. I think like the maximum you need really is 6 primaries. I'm now shading some of the foliage here, and I'm trying to make it look not too weird, so I will blend some of it because the contrast is a little stronger there, and I don't think I really communicated it too well, so you'll see in a moment. So yeah, So I just think you don't need that many paints to get started. You can kind of get just 3 primaries, maybe an additional one if you want, like the burnt sienna in this example. And I would recommend one of 2 primaries that I at least like to use. So I have one that's like the... oh, by the way, yeah, I just said that 6 is also a good number if you get like a warm and cool version of each primary. So what I like to use, and I just discovered it fairly recently, a lot of you know that I don't really like the phthalo blue. Well, I started liking it now that I know how to use it a little. So I do like it, you just need to know what to use it with. So the palette is very simple, what I use mostly. It's New Gamboge, kind of yellow. It's quinacridone rose or something like a cool red, and then either French ultramarine or phthalo blue. Both of them work. If you want to get just a few tubes, not spend too much money, get like these 3 plus maybe, I don't know, another one like a burnt sienna if you want to make life easier for you to sort of neutralize the French ultramarine. You can do that, but you really don't need much more. So yeah, that's the point. You can really do so much with just a few. You know, maybe get, I think burnt sienna is good for brown in general, or maybe sepia. Just get a brown. Browns are good. They can make darkening things easier. If you want to darken stuff, you can add some brown. It usually works. So yeah, that's just one way to do it. In oils, I believe also, from what I saw, they use brown to cool warm mixes, to darken, sorry, warm mixes. If you want to make it warmer, you use brown. If you want to make it cooler, you use blue. Both blue and brown sort of are used for darkening. So yeah, so that's one thing. It actually is pretty exciting to start minimal, I think. When you have too many paints, it's just so confusing. I made that huge mistake, and then I got some ugly mixes, and I don't even want to call it mud, because like at this point I don't even know what mud is really. Well, I do know, but kind of, you know, but it's just ugly mixes that don't work together. So with this you have harmony, you know, the colors are harmonious. They can't not be harmonious because you use the same ones for everything. Yeah. So anyway, now I'm darkening this bottom part of the foliage. I just felt a bit too light, so at this point, at this stage, I'm kind of winging it. I'm looking at the reference, trying to read some of the values. It's very confusing to me. I think if I would do this one on location, it could have been a little easier. I actually want to do this one on location. I'll just go to the same scene, same hour, get similar sun conditions, and just go for it. And I actually think I will do it. So yeah. Now I'm just making the mixture a little lighter because I do want to connect it with the top, blend it in a bit. I don't know why I stopped it exactly at the sort of traffic light. I could have continued it a little higher. It looks a bit weird. But yeah, I didn't put in enough thought for this part. Also, I think one skill I should probably work on is drawing as a preparation for these kinds of paintings. Because I think when you draw for a tight painting, you do things a little differently, and when you draw for a loose painting, you do them differently. So I think maybe I'm just not experienced enough in drawing for a loose painting, if that makes any sense. I think these are two different approaches. So being good, if I'm just good in drawing and making things as accurate as possible, that's really cool, but maybe I should match my drawing style to my painting style. You see what I mean? So I think this is something that will be worth working on. So yeah. By the way, I'm really curious. I don't usually ask too many questions while I'm recording these videos, but I'm just curious to know where you're from and where you're watching this video from. So if you want to leave down a comment below, you can say like a country, or if it's the US, you can say a state, whatever you want. Just curious to see where people are from. I know that like 90% of my audience is either from the US or from UK. I do have a lot of followers in India also, which is interesting, in Germany. So just curious to know where you're from. Write down in a comment below. just a fun little game to play, and maybe I'll just start doing it a little more, add a little more of these kind of questions to add some interest. So anyway, now I'm kind of done with the darkest darks. What's left is to add some details, and the first detail I add is this dry shadow. And look at how just putting it in there sort of hints that there's something in there, and who knows what. It could be like a traffic light, or like a light post. It could be many things, but I just put it in there. And the nice thing is that this shadow is creates a contrast with the people shadows, because the shadows of the people are sort of gray bluish, and this shadow on the bottom is more red, more warm, and so that's a good way to just create some more interest, you know. Now the thing is, in the middle there's an area between the trees and the buildings that now I'm just doing the zebra stripes, but soon you'll see in the very, very background there's just nothing. There's the tree, the building, and nothing. So I will add a few buildings there, just very loose, sort of a silhouette, a blue silhouette of buildings. You'll see that in a moment. Now I'm kind of getting to the point where it's time to put in some details also on the building itself, using a smaller brush. Now it's number 8. It's the silver black velvet I use for most of my paintings, but soon it will be time to use maybe some rigor. Use the rigor brush, and this is maybe what I'm gonna do in a moment now. So yeah, now I'm just trying to add some darks. Now I'm adding shadows to the people. So I'm trying to keep the brush not too wet. I don't want to reawaken the wash underneath, and also I want it to be very strong contrast, kind of. So yeah, so I just put it in there. And the thing that will really make it look good, I think, is the shadows on the faces. You'll see this in a moment. I'll add sort of a shadow on the right side of their faces, and it'll all make a little more sense. And I love how I show this. I actually showed this to my father, and I love how he immediately knew, okay, this is a guy, this is a woman, this is like, you don't need too many details to kind of know, and this is really cool. So this loose style is something I really enjoy. I think I'll practice painting people in this style specifically. Maybe the Alvaro Castanet way, we'll see. It's just a very interesting thing to do, I think. Plus, I really enjoy, one of the settings I really enjoy for a painting is sort of to draw and paint a few figures that are pretty up close with some of their background. So this is something I enjoy. Not as detailed as a portrait, but also not as low detailed as this one, if that makes any sense. Something in the middle. So now I'm putting those buildings I told you that I just felt like, you know, the background was so empty and it doesn't make sense. There has to be something in there. Probably it should have been trees, but the buildings work as well. And I think they gave this one a nice feeling of depth. Kind of see through the trees and see the buildings in the background. Maybe I should have given them a little bit of a sharper edge, just to make it a little clearer that these are in fact buildings. By the way, this is a real time completely. It's normal speed, but I did skip some of the mixing because they were a bit redundant, and I told you the colors I used, so it's fairly easy to duplicate in terms of the colors. You just, if you see an orange, you mix the red and yellow. If you see, you know, it's just fairly simple. So now there are a few architectural details on the building that I'm putting in there. Its shape is very challenging, I have to say, to draw. There's this rounded shape that's divided into straight lines. Really hard. It was a bit of a challenge, but I got through it. One thing I do want to add more is shadows on the windows, inside the windows, just to create some feeling of depth. So I start to do that with the rigger brush, and then I understand it's too thin, so I go back to my number 8 silver black velvet and continue with that. Most of the rest was done with the number 12, and you also saw in the very beginning the Raphael number 12 too, I believe. It's more of a mop. The silver black velvet comes to a better point, better tip, but the Raphael is good for large areas, for the skies, washes like this. Yeah, helps you lose some of the need to be accurate, because it is not that accurate. So you see, just putting in some of those deeper shadows on the windows. Yeah, and this is mostly it. There's just a few more touches to add. I add some darker shadow under the balcony. Luckily, the wash was still wet, so I could do that. If it wasn't, then it would look a bit weird. Yeah. And I think I'm done with the cars. I probably could have added, I think a good thing to do would be to add a light to the car in the not the farthest one, but the one a bit closer to it. There's two cars on the right, so the one the closest, maybe to add some tail lights. I think it could look really good, actually. I can still do it. I mean, it's simple. Right where I am now, under the back shield here. So yeah, just to create a better impression. But anyway, I think it's pretty clear that it's cars. So that makes me happy, because I literally put 0 details in there. What can I say? I feel like this style is really starting to grow on me. I think it's something I enjoy doing much more. So it's the style I also enjoy viewing, you know. Viewing at work and viewing as a final result. Now I felt like the tree wasn't shiny enough in green, so I literally took some sap green. I did something weird here. I took sap green that I didn't use in any part of this painting and put it in there. And I allowed myself to do that because if everything is harmonious, you can take a risk, quote unquote, with one color. So I actually used sap green for this tree. And because sap green is quite similar to the green you get with the French ultramarine and the new gamboge, then I know personally it's not such a big risk. Okay, added some dark areas to the tree, to the trunk of the tree. Some shadow on the right. I already did one before, but I just strengthened it a bit. I do want to do a similar thing to the traffic light with the rigger brush. Just add a small shadow underneath it, which I will do in a few moments. And here I really just thought about when I should just finish this, call it a wrap. Yeah, I think, yeah, so I just added some trees back there. I didn't even remember that I did that, but yeah, maybe to make it a little more, just to make more sense, because it's weird to end the tree exactly where the street light is. I mean, there's no real reason to do that. It doesn't make sense. So yeah, in terms of composition, probably I could have done a little bit of more preparation work, I guess. Yeah, so now I try to fix that weird ending of the dark areas just by throwing in there some darker areas, but I didn't want to go through to the other side of overdoing and overworking, so I kind of just threw it in there. Added some quinacridone rose now to warm it up a bit, but really trying not to I don't even know why I should warm it up. Trying not to do too much damage at this point, just seeing what I can get away with. Because it is okay like this. You don't really have to change anything. By the way, the picture is much more vibrant in real life, so the video doesn't do it justice. I think it has to do with the lighting, but also with my camera. So hopefully when I make my gear a little better, these will improve. In the picture, in the end, you usually get a better sense of what it looks like in real life. So you will get to see this in a few moments. So now I'm just, again, as I said, putting some dry brush on the, not really dry, somewhat dry brush, just to bring out that shape of the traffic light. I could have even not do the second line, just the first one. But yeah, I think it looks good. So I'm just signing it, and this one is done. And you'll soon see the result in a picture, and you'll understand what I mean. The colors look much more vibrant. It's because it's just that's what they look like in real life. So yeah, I hope the video quality will improve too soon. And anyway, yeah, this is it. Final result.
Okay friends, I hope you enjoyed this video and looking at the process. Final result again. I have to say what I really like about this one is the feeling of light, strong sunlight on the building. It was very tricky in terms of simplifications of this entire area. The people gave me some challenge too, because as some of you or many of you know by now, I feel very confident in just drawing figures, but then when I have to put them into a painting, it's a bit more challenging for me. So anyway, I felt like this was done properly here. Probably one of the first times I'm able to put in figures that look really good to my liking. So anyway, yeah, this is it. I learned a lot from this. I think what I'll actually do is make another version of this now that I learned a bit more, and just try to see what comes out of it. Maybe I'll take a bit of a different approach, because I learned some stuff from this one for making it, and I do want to try repeating maybe occasionally the same scene, because it is beneficial. You learn a lot of new things, and I see a lot of great artists go back to the same painting or the same scene and redo it with their new insights. So this is something I want to try out with this one as well, I think, just because it's such a nice scene and the sunlight and everything is really warm. So anyway, yeah, this is it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you still haven't, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, like this video if you liked it, and follow me on Instagram and Snapchat, and I will see you again in another video tomorrow.